The Jedi are a funny bunch. This line by Master Vernestra says it all.
I sense this is only a small part of a larger plan. Some sort of shift to tip the scales.
And don't get me wrong, the Jedi have always thought that they were in control, only to later find that they have been under the watchful eye of the Sith. And because of this, I enjoyed the expansion of the Rule of Two because it explains Palpatine's perspectives and his thoughts regarding the Jedi's dogmatic ways. That said, the Rule of Two was the first instance for me that highlighted how cunning the Sith were. In a weird way, Darth Bane was so introspective that he even realized that the Sith, to someday have control, they would need the Rule of Two. And so far, from the trailers and the materials we have seen released regarding the Acolyte, we know that this is Disney's take on expanding on that world. Jedi being blind and the evil growing right under their noses. I understand there are of course those who may be questioning a few things. For example, for me, this series either completely ignores Ki-Adi-Mundi's thoughts on the Sith, or they are doubling down on how blind and arrogant the Jedi really are. For context, the Jedi Council at the time disregarded Qui-Gon's reports regarding Maul, stating this.
It was a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
It just seems that the Jedi have been so far removed from actually facing the Sith that they themselves no longer know the definition of one. And to add to this, if a High Republic Jedi saw this, they would probably think, well, I'll be damned, the Sith are back. So what? Did they forget to just report this incident? Or are they going to twist the story in such a way that these reports were kept secret to ensure the public does not panic? To add to this, showrunner Leslie Headland shed some light on her thoughts regarding the Sith and the Rule of Two. In an interview with Den of Geek, she states the following. Yoda knows about the Rule of Two. He says there's always a master and an apprentice. So while they were considered extinct, there was a little bit of knowledge about the Sith that I felt would not have come from ancient history. To me, it felt like to know that information that quickly, it would have had to have been in the last 100 years. This was a hot take, and it makes sense. Here is Yoda and Mace talking about the Sith during Qui-Gon's funeral.
There's no doubt the mysterious warrior was a Sith.
Always two there are. No more, no less.
This is dope because it means Leslie is considering the current knowledge of the Jedi, or at least the knowledge in the Phantom Menace, and possibly tying it to what Yoda said to Mace as something like he knows it from the past, aka the events in the Acolyte. That said, this may mean Yoda was skeptical at first when Qui-Gon explains his experience with Maul, but now having confirmed the Jedi's suspicions, they begin to take more serious precautions. I mean, obviously it didn't work with the Empire and all, but that is still kind of fun because now she's playing with the ideas of what the Jedi Council currently knows. So she's pretty much stating here that Yoda would have known, possibly again from hearing from his predecessors, but never having experienced it personally. And now with Qui-Gon's death and confirming that Maul was a Sith, this kind of ties everything together and allows the story to flow as it did in the prequel trilogy. Okay, but this is taking me away from the point of the video, so let's get back into that. In this video, I want to discuss the Sith that we know are alive during the time period of the Acolyte TV series. Because the show takes place approximately 130 BBY, we have some fun Sith to discuss. I also want to warn you guys, I will be mixing legends and canon details, but for the most part, I will remain true to the canon, given it is what will make the most sense for any Star Wars material associated with Disney. That said, I will generously sprinkle in some legends just to add possibilities and to round out character storytelling because of the fact that some of these characters have lost so much details when they moved over to canon. Just remember to take those points with a grain of salt, given they are not canon. With that said, let's talk about this guy. Okay, well, for those of you who know, Darth Tenebrous was a Bith male, who could have been this dude's cousin for all we know. He most likely would have been the Sith in control during the Acolyte time period. Now, I say likely because in canon, he actually does not have a date of birth, nor does he have a date of death. In Legends, we know he dies, of course, at the hands of his apprentice during the year 67 BBY. This is something I'm sure the showrunners considered, and maybe in the show we will actually get confirmation about his death, his birth, etc., or how long his reign was, because it would be the perfect time to fill in his canon backstory. Now, in Legends, there were obviously more details about him, like how he technically became immortal by means of his maxi-chlorians, but he ended up just reliving his death over and over again. Now, that's one way to become immortal. But yeah, in terms of canon, there isn't much. And now, because that isn't really that much fun, let's talk about how he lived his double life in Legends. Like Plagueis and Sidious, Tenebrous had a double life, and this was to ensure that the Sith would remain in positions of power. Tenebrous, like many Sith lords before him, focused extensively on expanding the Sith's network of informants and agents. These operatives served as the Sith's intelligence network across the galaxy, collecting information and gaining access to top levels of the galactic politics. To aid this effort, Tenebrous assumed the public persona of Rugus Gnome, a starship designer whose exclusive clients were the elite members of the galaxy's rising powers. Some things to point out: he was believed to have been the original designer of the scimitar ship, used most notably by Maul. The second thing is he is powerful enough with the Force to foresee who his future apprentice would be. He arranged and manipulated the marriage of two Munes. They would then give birth to Darth Plagueis. Another detail I'd like to dig into is his extensive efforts on expanding the Sith network. I would not say it's too much of a stretch to include Mother Anisia's coven of witches. The Sith, after all, have a track record of recruiting from such groups. R.I.P. Asajj Ventress. Then again, Cal does pick up a dub, so maybe we're not that mad. This also leaves a massive what if this guy is actually Tenebrous. His head isn't shaped like Plagueis, and besides, Plagueis would be 10 years old around this time, so it could really be Tenebrous, or it could have been another Bith apprentice. You see, in Legends, Tenebrous violated the rule of two and trained another, Darth Venamis, and as mentioned, he was also a Bith male. But again, he would also have been too young, so maybe not him. My point about this is Tenebrous appears to be okay with violating the rule of two. So, if we understand how long his reign is, who's to say he did not have multiple illegitimate apprentices? Or another fun theory is that what if this current apprentice kind of falls out of the path or following the Sith rule and ultimately dies in the Acolyte series. Again, I don't want to speculate too much. That said, if the main Sith is Tenebrous, then why would he be revealing himself? This is my only true issue with stating that, this indeed would be Tenebrous, because the Sith's objective is to lay low until the correct moment. I understand that we're trying to showcase that May is a potentially strong character in the dark side, but I can't see her being someone worth revealing a millennium of secrecy over. My bet is still on someone like Venamis, and we'll talk more in details why. Now on to Plagueis and Venamis. Plagueis, as most of us know, is the master of Sidious. This guy was obsessed with the notion of immortality, and it was exactly the story of Plagueis the Wise that Sidious used to entice Anakin. I mentioned earlier that Plagueis would be too young, and quite frankly, his forehead would not fit in that helmet. So we know that at least this guy is not Plagueis. Does that mean that we won't see him? I'm not sure. To be honest, I'd be surprised if there wasn't at least a name drop of sorts, because this would be the correct time that Tenebrous would be moving to the next phase of his plan. Now, with all of that said, and because we have to consider Plagueis being a canon character, I think Venamis would be the better candidate to make an appearance. And now I will start things off by stating a hole in my theory. Firstly, Venamis in Legends was stated to being born around the time of 75 BBY, again making him too young in terms of age. But given this dude's status as a Legends character, I would think it would be easy to make a story out of him and use him as a disposable character of sorts. My reasoning behind this is simple. The Sith were meant to lay low until the execution of Order 66. Now, obviously, not just Order 66, although that was part of the grand plan. Revealing themselves like this kind of goes against their overall plan. It looks premature. This leads me to conclude that if it was any of the characters we just discussed, it would be Venamis. Firstly, he would have the motive. The dude is an illegitimate apprentice and only claimed the name of Darth by his own volition, rather than it being bestowed on him. And given how melodramatic Sith are, I'm looking at you, Maul and Savage Opress, who's to say another fellow renegade Sith won't go to such lengths for personal reasons? This makes sense for me because it allows for a disposable character to be eliminated by the end of the series. It can also be made out to appear as if that's it. The dark side users, Venamis, has been officially wiped out, and there is nothing for us to see here. Because in the eyes of the Jedi, it would have been just like a false alarm. Okay, maybe not a false alarm, but they could treat it like the situation has been resolved. Not only that, Venamis has less concrete details canon-wise, whereas Tenebrous and Plagueis are canon characters, giving writers less wiggle room for mistakes, whereas Venamis isn't. Again, not 100% sure with the direction I was going there, but I guess with Venamis, it's like starting fresh and creating from the start with no strings attached. Overall, the Jedi and the Sith we see in the Acolyte have to either die or disappear in a meaningful kind of way. Even Master Vernestra, given her species, can now live 200 plus years. She too would have to go bye-bye in a way that makes sense. I don't know if they can pull off a Rogue One type of ending, but they're gonna have to in order to keep nerds like myself from revolting. I also want to highlight characters like Dagan Gera from Jedi Survivor. This guy was from the High Republic era and survived by a cryo chamber. I don't think they'd have to go into these types of extremes to pull off some sort of older characters into the newer current timeline, if that's what they want. But I just wanted to point out that it is very possible to create characters from the High Republic times and bring them into current canon timelines without it being terrible. Careful writing and planning is definitely something that can be done. Woo! And that's it for me in this one. To conclude this video, I want to say that this new villain is definitely intriguing. Whether or not it is Tenebrous or Venomous, I'd be excited how they were to weave their story into the current timeline. And that is going to do it for me in this one. Let me know what your thoughts and feelings are in the comment section down below, and let's get talking. Make sure to like and sub for more Star Wars content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!